So our first presenters are Megan Siwi and Kristen LeMay. They're MLIS candidates at Western University. Their talk, Let's Give Them Something to Tweet About, Applying Best Practices at Western Libraries, is based on their co-op experiences at Western University. Megan has an BA in English Literature from Wilfrid Laurier University and has completed co-op terms at the Bracken Health Science Library at Queen's University and at the Office of the University Librarian at Western's Library. These two work experiences have incited a strong interest in academic librarianship for Megan, who specifically enjoyed developing student engagement with the library through social media. She hopes to pursue her interests of communication and student engagement in a future career. Kristen has a BA and a master's in English Literature from Queen's University and has completed co-op terms at the Library of Parliament and the D.B. Walden Library at Western Libraries. Kristen has been inspired by the different e-learning projects being created in higher education and with the support of librarians at Western. She was able to pursue their interests during her co-op. In her future career, Kristen hopes to lead e-learning initiatives and to continue strengthening libraries' relationships with patrons through social media. So please welcome me in joining Megan and Kristen.
Okay, hi again. As a co-op student at Western Libraries, I worked to develop a vision for the Western Libraries Twitter account, as well as to create a set of best practices that would help us achieve those goals. I worked with my colleague, Kristen, who created and ran the Twitter account for the D.B. Walden Library, which served as an excellent opportunity to try out our best practices. There's a lot of excellent literature available on how to effectively use Twitter to reach your goals as an academic library. I won't be walking you through each best practice that we developed, but I will show you a few key steps that were taken to create a Twitter account that is helping to achieve the goals of the institution. Kristen will then discuss some strategies used specifically for the Walden Library Twitter account so that you can see our best practices in action. Tweeting can be an effective tool for an academic library, but it is important to take the time to do it right. It can seem tempting to dive into social media, especially in a university setting where it may seem like every student is active on Twitter. But as Laura Solomon, who's an expert in social media for libraries, says, many libraries take social media to mean that they should jump into the roaring river of online interaction. But by doing so, they miss key concepts of how to best utilize this incredible tool at their fingertips. So if it takes so much time and effort to make Twitter an effective tool for your library, then why bother? By not participating in social media, I think a library could suffer a disconnect from its users. Twitter can be used as a service point for your library. As more resources are accessible from points outside of the library space, conversations, requests, and sometimes complaints are happening outside the physical library as well. Without a social media presence to create an online virtual community, the library cannot engage the user to the best of its ability. So once you've decided that Twitter will be a worthwhile tool for your academic library, how are you going to do it right? I'm just going to highlight a few steps that are the most important out of the best practices, based on recent literature and based on a lot of trial and error on both the Western Libraries accounts and the D.B. Walden Twitter account. So first, establish best practices and measurable goals for your account. Best practices serve as a guideline for the voice that you want your account to have. It ensures that the account remains professional, and it helps determine the strategy you will use to make the account as effective as possible. Establishing goals that you can actually measure, such as follower increase, will help you see if you're accomplishing these goals. Second, try not to think of Twitter as a marketing tool, but more as an engagement tool. Laura Solomon encourages libraries to focus on this engagement and what the benefit to the user is, not just as a way to promote the library programs or resources. This can be managed by balancing posts about your library's promotions with posts of general interest to your target audience. Overall, it's going to be the relationship that will grow your online community and therefore grow interest in your library. Determine your target audience and make posts with them in mind. Is your audience for your current students or for faculty? Is it for the general community, or maybe it's also for alumni? This could change throughout the year, throughout the month, and sometimes throughout the week. And make a plan beyond establishing your vision and your goals. Consider issues such as, how often are you going to post? Thompson Scott suggests that one post daily is ideal, and Laura Solomon also echoes this recommendation throughout the literature. It is also important to plan the content that you're going to write itself. Kristen and I both found that making a monthly editorial calendar extremely useful. This calendar varied between writing out tweets ahead of time or simply marking down important upcoming library events so that we made sure we wouldn't miss them while tweeting. This helps on busy days and on days when you simply don't have the energy to be creative or funny, which can be hard to do on demand sometimes. Monitoring is also a crucial aspect of having an active Twitter account. Twitter is where many students come to leave comments, ask questions, and of course make their complaints. When our library monitored the account, as well as monitoring hashtags that were related to our libraries, we could promptly answer the questions in the comments, and by simply acknowledging the complaints, we could often diffuse the situation entirely. It was also a great opportunity by monitoring the hashtags to get a feel for how students were feeling about the library in general, and that can sometimes be hard as they don't often make these comments to a librarian's face. And finally, the structure of the tweet itself is also really important. Solomon recommends beginning each of your tweets with the benefit to the user instead of using commanding language such as "come check this out." The use of humor in a tweet is another effective engagement tool, especially for university students. Funny, relevant hashtags are a good way of incorporating the relevant humor, as are the use of images in posts. So Kristen will now give examples of how these recommended practices have been put into action by the DB Walden Library's newly developed Twitter account, and will discuss tips for getting your staff on board.
By following these best practices, we saw success in the DB Walden Library's new Twitter account. We attracted over 230 followers in its first 2 months. As Megan mentioned, Laura Solomon strongly suggests that libraries' tweets should answer the question, "What's in it for me?" My strategy was to make it easy for followers to understand why they should care about what the DB Walden Library had to offer. Take a look at these tweets. With these tweets, the appeal is front and center. Free scholarly content. Sherlock, a character recently revitalized by TV shows and films. As well as making the incentive clear, these tweets avoid bossy or command-driven language and use Twitter handles and hashtags to extend the reach of the tweets. These tweets were successful in terms of engagement. We received several retweets and favorites, 13 retweets for the open access tweet. Walden has many other names. One of the more infamous ones is Club Walden. Since Walden did not have a Twitter presence prior to this October, one clever student decided to create an @ClubWalden account in 2011. This account has not been active for a year, but it has over 1,300 followers. The number of followers for this account became part of our motivation for setting up an official Walden Twitter account. Clearly, students were interested in talking about our library. While I couldn't adopt the sarcastic tone at Club Walden, I did learn something from this brand hijacking. To match Club Walden's success in attracting followers, I needed to humanize the Twitter account and to add a little humor, a suggestion which also appears in the Western Library's best practices. We get tired too. Need research help but don't want to leave your chair? Ask a librarian is here to help. This tweet not only makes the incentive clear, but also makes Walden seem relatable. We get tired too. There are humans running the Twitter account. Students responded well to this. This tweet was retweeted and favorited several times. To give a little context to this next tweet, it can be quite difficult to find seating at Walden during exam season. The student tweeted, "Good thing I'm in my workout gear. Hunger Games is starting in Walden. #understudy for Katniss." This tweet was just too good to resist. Walden's reply continued the Hunger Games humor with an infamous wish of good fortune from the series. May the odds be ever in your favor. With this tweet, I acknowledge that the end of term is a difficult time for students and that it can be a struggle to find study space, but I did so in a fun way. This student appreciated the jest and favorited Walden's reply. A few days later, another student favorited the reply as well. Successful student engagement. Speaking of engagement, I will end with a suggestion about how to encourage staff buy-in. In addition to promoting the Twitter account at staff meetings, we started a social media social where interested librarians and library assistants gathered for a coffee break to discuss ideas for future tweets. By meeting outside of the office, we were able to relax and generate some fantastic ideas in a low-pressure environment. The other staff members were enthusiastic and came up with great content ideas, which I used for the December and January editorial calendars. As you can see, this tweet, product of the social, was successful in student engagement with 13 retweets and 17 favorites. Importantly, the social, which will continue this term, encouraged staff in our department to get excited about Twitter and to feel invested in its success. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope that by listening to our discussion of best practices and their application has inspired you to think about Twitter differently within academic libraries, whether you're managing an account or actively following other libraries' accounts. Thank you.